Thank you, Senator. Senator Ernst, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also would like to express my condolences to the family and the friends of the late General Stewart. So good morning to our witnesses, and thanks for the testimony today. The greatest military challenge that we face is really a two-front competition, as you've laid out so well this morning, between China and Russia. So I do agree with your judgment that China and Russia will maintain their strategic ties, which does create potential threats. And let's be clear, we've heard you state over and over again, as we've seen China and Russia advancing, they are clearly encircling us around the globe. So China proclaimed a no-limits partnership on the eve of Russia's invasion, and she just went to Moscow and affirmed that commitment. And we watched all of that unfold on our television sets. And Director Haynes, first to you, how has Beijing's assessment of its junior partner in Moscow changed since the invasion? And then to you, General Barrier, do the recent joint military exercises suggest a deeper or deepening military commitment between the two countries?
Thank you, Senator. So in terms of how the relationship has changed, and particularly China's perception of it since the invasion of Ukraine, I will say that even before the invasion of Ukraine, we recognized that China and Russia were getting increasingly closer, and that we were seeing cooperation across all different sectors. But to your point, since the invasion, that closeness has accelerated to some extent, and in part this is due to the fact that Russia is increasingly beholden to and needs China, and China perceives Russia increasingly as, a country that was already in the sort of little brother role, is often how it's described, but nevertheless is now even more beholden, and therefore they have greater leverage. And that can sort of manifest itself in the context of various aspects of the relationship, such as in the Arctic, where they actually have differing interests, where, China is not an Arctic country, but wants to be in effect and wants to have more power and authority in that area. And Russia recognizes that they're going to need China and their investment in order to get to some of the resources that they're interested in the Arctic. And as a consequence, that China sees an opportunity, and an increasing one, in light of the current scenario with Russia. And so we see them now at sort of the peak of their economic trade, continuing military exercises and other types of collaboration and political and technical. And it is moving, even as we continue to assess from an intelligence community perspective that there are limits, ultimately, that they are unlikely to get to the point of being like NATO allies, for example, as we see them.
Great. Thank you. General Barrier.
Senator, I would describe it as deepening, and it's been gradual, but the complexity, the scope, and the tempo of these joint exercises is increasing, mostly in the air domain and the naval domain. We don't have a lot of insight into more sensitive activities, but I do believe that it is deepening and growing.
Thank you. And to both of you as well, with this partnership and the deepening of their military commitment through exercises and so forth, how can we find a wedge and really divide the two countries by driving a wedge between them? What can we find as a strategy to separate those two powers?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have done some analysis, and we can get you a more thorough explanation rather than my quick remarks. But I would say that we do see some challenges for them in getting, as they get closer and closer. And largely, one can recognize that there is a tension where there's such an asymmetry in the power of the relationship, where you can actually use that to some extent to exploit some of the challenges. But it is, I think that it is unlikely that we will take them really off the trajectory of continuing to get closer in the coming years.
Senator, I believe it's a really tough problem, and it's a great question. In a closed session, there would be some things that we could discuss.
Okay, excellent. And with that, I'll yield my remaining time. Thank you.